Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today to hear more about the new Custom Viz framework that we've built for Dashboard Studio. My name is Lizzie Lee. I'm a product manager for Splunk Dashboards, and this is Justin.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm Justin. I'm a software engineer on the studio team, and I helped create the new custom Viz framework that we're going to introduce today.
You're going to see some things that obviously, don't exist yet, but we're still really excited to share it with you. So just to give a little bit of context, Justin and I, the dashboards team that we work on, we are responsible actually both for classic dashboards as well as Dashboard Studio. And from our telemetry, we can see that over 30% of customers use custom visualizations in their classic dashboards. And so this was a really important feature for us to be able to support in Dashboard Studio. We started in Splunk Enterprise 10.2 to support existing custom visualizations in Dashboard Studio so that if you had any apps that you had already downloaded and installed and were already using in your classic dashboards, you could seamlessly migrate those over or just start using them in your Studio dashboard. What we're going to talk to you about today is something coming new in Splunk Cloud and Splunk Enterprise 10.4, which is a more modern custom visualizations framework. And I'll hand it over from here to Justin to tell you more about that framework.
Cool. Thanks, Lizzie. As part of this presentation, we're going to be showing a demo, particularly some of the differences between the old framework and the new framework. Before we get to that, I want to go over some of the old friction points in the old framework. So to begin, one of the biggest friction points in the old framework was the require.js slash AMD module. So that was a legacy convention that is outdated, and um, it is not a good developer experience. It uses old conventions like require and function keywords that are just not relevant for a modern developer experience. On top of that, we have tenant up lifecycle methods that the developer would have to maintain and keep track of. Some of them notably being setup view, get initial data params, format data, and so on and so forth. And all of these are subclasses of Splunk visualization space, which override the appropriate combination of these methods. But the challenge is that there are consequences of getting this wrong that aren't always obvious, and things will fail silently or behave unexpectedly. Another issue is that the build loop is manual and slow. Every time you update the source code and visualization source, you must rebuild the visualization, and that's straight from the Splunk documentation. So there's no live watch mode. There's no live updating of your build. Everything that you change, you have to rebuild manually and install it into a Splunk instance to see. And lastly, security is your responsibility. So any dynamic value that will be added to the DOM should be passed through escape HTML, and that's also straight from the documentation. So in the old custom viz framework, the custom viz had access to the window and it had access to the DOM of the parent. And so this is just ripe for cross-site scripting attacks. And yeah, the responsibility to keep it secure and maintain that security was really hoisted onto the developers themselves. Before we get to the demo, I wanted to show the diagram and the architecture of the new framework. And so I'll walk through each layer. So starting at the Splunk platform level, the app registers through Dashboard Studio via visualizations.conf. And the framework type is set to Studio Visualization. Your visualization code runs inside an isolated sandboxed iframe. And that way, there's no access to the Splunk Web's DOM or global state. Communication between the iframe and the dashboard studio happens over a post message bridge. So data, options, theme, and tokens, all of it are passed as structured messages across this boundary. And you don't need to interact with post message directly. The SDK abstracts all of this away using functions such as add data sources listener, add options listener, etc. The configuration for the visualization lives in config.json, and it is a native JSON object, nice and simple with no complicated or contrived values or static strings that you need to keep track of. And after that, all of the rendering is done however you like. You can use plain DOM, React, Canvas, and you have access to the dashboard extension API that we created for you, and also a CLI that you can use to set up the scaffolding for the app. And now we can go to our demo showdown. We're going to be doing some coding with the old versus new framework. And the goal of this the goal of this demo is to show what are the friction points that you'll encounter when in the old framework and how easy it is comparatively in the new framework. Okay. And so this is, we're going to do the old framework first. So this is our starting point. We have a legacy custom visualization that's a big number app. And we want to add a color configurator to this app so that we can change the color of the rendered big number. Currently, there's nothing in the source code to configure the color. By the end, we'll have that wired up, and you'll see what it takes on each side to get there. Okay, and now moving on to the code. This is a real legacy custom viz project. To get started with one of these, you typically download a zip template from the Splunk developer documentation and wire it up manually. There's no CLI equivalent. I like to add a single configurable color property to this project, and I want to show you what that involves. The first file we need to declare the property type is for the spec file, and that is in readme/savesearches.conf.spec. And I'll paste these changes rather than type them out so we can move through the structure efficiently. So even adding something simple as a color configuration, we need to add this verbose template into savesearches.conf.spec. And you can see the static string that we are setting for this value is very verbose and is not intuitive at all. The second file that we need to update is visualizations.conf, which lives right here. And now we need to add default.mainColor. And after that, the third file we need to touch is formatter.html. This is the formatter for the editor UI. The name attribute here has to match the fully qualified key from the spec file exactly. If there's a typo anywhere in that string, the value silently won't bind. And the fourth file that we need to touch is visualization source.js. And here we need to update the update view function with the configuration that we just added to the rest of the files. So as you can see, one property, 4 files, the fully qualified namespace of the configuration is different for many of the files. There's different formats and there's no link between them. It's very easy to get the declaration wrong, and there's no way to verify that they're correct unless you have fully built the app and installed it and rendered the app on your Splunk instance. Mainly, I want to look at the main color variable here. This is what reading an option looks like in practice. It's a concatenated namespace string every time for every property, and any change to the code requires a full rebuild. With that in mind, let's look at the final result and let's see how the old framework looks with these changes. So this is the configured color picker. Um, as you can see, the color has been updated to a new color, and specifically to the one that we defined um, in the configuration earlier. To change the color, we would go into the source editor and we'd add an option with that long concatenated string that we saw earlier. Funnily enough, I changed the color to the one we had earlier, but you see the point. If we wanted a different color, we just choose a different option. And this is the end result with the property in place. So just to change that one property and just to add the option to change colors, we needed to go through all of those files and use that outdated verbose method of updating the configuration. Okay, now moving on to the studio side. Um, this is what the custom viz looks like on the studio side. And this is a custom viz that was built using all of the developer tools that we developed for this release. And as part of this exercise, we're going to go through um, the same steps, add the same configuration, and we'll see how long that takes on the studio side. For the studio side, I want to mention that there's a CLI that we can use for the scaffolding of the app. We don't need to download it manually from the Splunk developer site like before. Um, the app that we're going to be working with is pre-built, but I just want to show you what the starting point looks like when creating an app from scratch using the CLI. So right now we're in a directory called demo live, and that's where we're going to create our scaffolding. And we're just going to use a create command that we created as part of the CLI. And just like that, it prompts you for the project name. We'll call it my demo viz. And we can just use the defaults for the options. And just like that, in one step, it created all of the necessary files and directories we need to get started on this custom visualization. Okay, and now going back to our big number demo. Okay, going back to the code. The big number app folder here is where the studio version of this app lives. And there's three files that we're going to be focused on. It's going to be visualization.js, config.json, and we're also going to be focusing on visualization.css as well. So starting with config.json, this is the same starting point as before. But it's a native JSON file. So there's no Splunk proprietary config that you have to memorize. The single file is where all the property definitions live. So in here, all we need to do is update the option schema to add the option for main color and the default value that we want. And for the editor UI, it's as simple as specifying the editor config value in the JSON object as well. So it's one property declared once with its default value in one place. So the number is already rendering. Now we need to wire up the color option we just declared in config.json. So we want to update the state to pass in the options that we just defined. We make a small update to render to attach the style.color to the element. And we use one of our functions from the SDK as part of the post message bridge. We're going to be adding an options listener that's going to be listening for changes to the configuration and re-rendering the viz. And that's the complete change. One listener, one additional line of the render function, and options come through as a plain object. So way less files touched. We didn't even actually need to update visualization.css. The color was configured by default in config.json, and it's being listened to by the visualization.js. And so once that's done, what we can do is we can package the app using the SDK that we provided as well. So just do a yarn install. It comes with a build script out of the box and also a package script, so you can easily package it into an SPL file. And once that is done, this is what the end result looks like. So you can see the changes we needed to make were much smaller, and you can even see that there is a color picker in the UI, and changing the color is easy as that. So in summary, same visualization. On the legacy side, there are way more files to update, AMD modules, a manual rebuild cycle. Not to mention, you have to download the scaffolding from the developer docs website, and you have to deal with very verbose configuration strings that don't align across the files, and you have to manually keep track of. On the studio side, there's three files, well, two in our case. There's a CLI for creating the scaffolding, and you can use ES build out of the box to yarn build and yarn install all of your dependencies. And so that is it for the demo. Let me go back to the slides. So to go into more detail about the developer tools that we'll be providing as part of this new framework, the two tools are Dashboard Extension and Splunk Create. So Both of these tools will be part of the Splunk UI ecosystem. The dashboard extension part is SDK, which will come with functions that you can use to set up that post message listener bridge between the iframe and the Dashboard Studio parent. It'll contain useful functions for the core listener API, and we'll also have a React version of it as well. So it'll be the same API, but just in React hooks. So it'll be easily usable in a React framework. And it'll have full TypeScript support with exported types as well. For the CLI side of things, we are going to use Splunk Create. So just like how I showed in the demo, there's going to be a create command that scaffolds the full project. It'll create all the necessary files and structure, and it'll come with two templates for now, vanilla JavaScript and React. But in the future, we're looking to build more integrations as well. And it'll include the full ES build pipeline that you saw, like watch mode, packaging, building, etc. And now we're going to transition to a demo where one of our teammates created a AI skill to vibe code, creating a custom viz. And he's going to go through the thought process of creating it and demo the custom viz to you as well.
Hi, I'm Thomas from the Dashboard Enterprise team. Today I'm going to show you what it looks like to build a custom visualization using the new framework in our skill. What you're looking at on screen here is a Counter-Strike 2 Pro match replaying inside of a Splunk dashboard using a custom visualization I put together over the course of a few hours of chatting with Claude. I have a Python script sending tick-by-tick game data to the Splunk HTTP event collector, and then a React-based custom viz ingesting that data and playing it back. Each dot on the map is a player with a cone to visualize where they're looking. On the right, we have a feed for the eliminations, some round win information and objectives, as well as a list of the players and their respective HPs, as well as the KDAs. On the top, we have a score bug with a round timer and team scores. And if you watch closely, you can see grenade trails with actual bounce paths from the demo file. And all of this is driven by a single SPL search. We can peek into the search data here and see that we have new events coming in. So yeah, it is pretty cool to look at. This all started with no spec or design doc. It was just an idea and wanting to make a cool visualization. So I can pop over here and show you what the chat kind of looked like. It's a pretty long chat, so I pulled the main important ideas from it. So the first message was, I want to make a cool viz for Splunk with something like my interests for like video games. Are there any data sets out there, like players, second by second positioning, maybe something from CS, Valorant, or League? I'd like to try to use that data and make a custom viz to replay the gameplay. Claude told me that CS2 gives you the richest data and the most control. With the demo files, we can try these libraries to export them to CSV and then index them into Splunk with timestamp data. Then after that, we could probably build a custom viz using the new custom viz framework on Canvas to render a map. So as I said, before a single line of code or anything, it was just chatting with Claude, and Claude was able to lay out an entire roadmap for how we could tackle this. So as you can see here, this is the basic idea of what Claude had in mind. We could get the ticks for the player positions, the kills, the grenades, rounds, all that stuff, index it, build a SPL query with that, and then use that for the custom viz. So with that in mind, I said, yeah, let's do a 2D overhead map, make a custom viz using the new custom viz framework. Claude immediately went out and started exploring everything, started reading some docs and templates. I had some other visualizations that it referenced as well to kind of get started. And yeah, from there, it was just building the viz and then putting it into Splunk. With that, after that first iteration of it, uploading it there, it was basically just iteration, finding bugs, telling it new things I wanted to add. So like an example was, oh, okay, awesome. Can we modify the viz so that it's smoother between movements? Because for an earlier iteration, it was very choppy since it was kind of teleporting the players around the map and they were moving a little too fast. Also, can we just add like a player counter or like a HUD on the side, because that wasn't initially in the viz, like what's actually in CS. Claude said, let me tackle all three at once and proceeded to add it. So the workflow of all of this is captured now as a reusable AI skill that we polished and which we are going to send out eventually for others to take advantage of. All you really need to do to use it is go into Claude or whatever agent you would like and do build custom viz. From there, it will immediately begin prompting you for what you want to accomplish with the viz. We can obviously set the viz name, the label, a description, expected SPL columns, and other things. And since it's just chatting with an agent, it really is your up to you to figure out what you want to do with it. The agent already knows how to scaffold the project, initiate the custom viz using our packages, the newest packages, and how to build and package that viz to upload for your Splunk instance. Basically, you can focus on what you want the viz to look like and do, and the agent will handle the rest. So as a little just kind of example of what it like was able to build, this whole file and project was built using the agent. As I said, just in one weekend, admittedly a long conversation history, but a lot of just iteration and adding cool things that I wanted. So now this whole viz is ready and comes with a README and everything for how to use it. And yeah, with that, we have a working CS2 Viz replay. I think it's pretty fun to watch. It's cool to see everything go on in the game. But yeah, that is about it. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you for listening.
So just to go over a summary of some of the technical highlights of the new framework, it lives in a sandboxed iframe. So security comes out of the box. There's a parent messaging layer that works on a post message bridge and is inherently safer due to the sandboxing. Yarn dev exists out of the box, so watch mode is simple. You don't need to manually rebuild every time like in legacy custom viz. There is out of the box React support and plain options object. So you don't need to deal with convoluted static strings. Okay. So some frequently asked questions that we had for this framework. One of them is, will my existing app work? So the answer that we have to that is maybe. We tried our best to create a bridge layer that maps the old framework to the new framework, but admittedly, since these are custom visualizations, there are things that may not translate, especially if they are very proprietary and not necessarily from the Splunk ecosystem. So I would recommend checking our documentation for more tips. But yeah, some examples that might not work are proprietary configs that Splunk may not recognize, or ways that data is structured that is it is very novel. Um, there may also be things that access the parent window that may not work in our iframe context. Okay, question 2, what do I do if my existing app does not work? Our recommendation is to rebuild your app in the new framework. And honestly, that is, I think, the easiest way to make sure the existing app works. It may work out of the box in the beginning, but like I said, there are things that don't translate over perfectly. So we're hoping that with the new tools that we provide, creating a new app will not be too difficult. And lastly, is there an app inspect check for the new framework? There is going to be an app inspect check. The details are being ironed out, but our goal is to help developers and have parsing that look out for things that may be stumbling blocks and things like that. So just to make the process as secure and streamlined as possible. And with that, that's the end of our presentation. And we'd like to thank everyone for listening, and we'd like to open it up for questions.